This video topic was suggested by, well, a lot of people, and you can put forward your ideas and topics by clicking the link to the form in the description. If you don't have any ideas right now, well, that's okay, because it's going to be in the description of every video going forward, so feel free to add them in the future. The last few years have been difficult for most countries, for Turkey especially so. The country is continuing to face a currency crisis and a recession. Then the pandemic hit, and there's also just general political turmoil in the country, all of which has eroded President Erdogan's image, popularity, and support at the worst possible time. So in this video, we'll take a look at what's happened, what's causing a headache for Erdogan, and what could happen next. Part of the most recent political crisis results from Sedat Peker, a convicted Turkish mafia boss living in exile in Dubai. And yes, you know a video is going to be good when it starts with a mafia boss. Anyway, in early May, after being targeted by a police operation, Peker began putting up a series of YouTube videos levelling some quite serious accusations against the Turkish government and high-ranking officials. According to Peker, senior members of Erdogan's Justice and Development Party have been involved in the likes of corruption, drugs and arms trafficking, and even murder. While these allegations are, well, just allegations for now, they have already caused issues, having been viewed more than 75 million times. This has, in the words of Bloomberg, heightened concerns over Turkish state corruption and exposed alleged rifts between rival factions at the worst possible time. In any case, these allegations are going somewhere, because in June, the US Department of Justice arrested a Turkish businessman in Austria on charges of one count of conspiracy to commit money laundering to the tune of $133 million, 10 counts of wire fraud, and one count of obstruction of official proceedings. The kicker being that this businessman was actually the target of some of Peker's videos, with Peker claiming that he was able to evade investigation and capture in Turkey by fleeing after being tipped off by the Interior Minister. All of this suggests that the US is working on a similar narrative to Peker, lending credence to his claims. Anyway, all of this comes at a time when corruption cannot just be brushed aside as a necessary evil to facilitate an economic miracle in Turkey, because thus far, the government's economic policies are failing, and failing badly. Before delving into the particulars, it's worth taking a moment to go through Econ 101. There are broadly two ways that a government can control and influence an economy: fiscal policy and monetary policy. Fiscal concerns spending and taxation, and isn't the main thing at issue here. But monetary policy concerns the supply and flow of money, with the likes of interest rates and exchange rates falling under this monetary policy umbrella. By changing the central bank's interest rate up or down, a country can influence the likes of spending, saving, lending, and investment, all of which then translate into a much wider impact on exchange rates and the economy more generally. Some governments don't actually have that much control over monetary policy. For example, in the UK, the Bank of England, the UK central bank, was given operational independence in 1988, allowing it to control monetary policy on its own. And all Eurozone member states, as part of using the euro, transferred their national bank's control of monetary policy to the European Central Bank. The logic of this, giving central banks operational independence, is that it removes monetary policy from political discretion, specifically to avoid a country's government from engineering things like economic booms by lowering interest rates in the run-up to an election. Doing this makes lending super cheap, while reducing incentives to save. So people start spending, and more spending equals economic growth. This economic growth would then look politically good, and the incumbents can claim an economic miracle. The issue being the more long-term consequences of such a move. Low interest rates can provoke speculative booms, as well as engender dreaded hyperinflation. This, however, doesn't really matter for incumbents. Let's say that the Yellow Party engineered an economic boom by lowering interest rates. If Yellow then win, they can then spend the first year of their second term in office fixing the mess it's caused, before repeating the move in the run-up to the next election. However, if yellow lose, then, well, it's not their problem to fix anymore. And now they have a stick with which to beat their political opponents with, claiming that when we left office, the economy was thriving. You ruined it. Forcing the Purple Party to pick up the mantle of getting the economy back under control, a move that is typically quite painful. Anyway, Turkey's central bank is not operationally independent, and as such, has been subject to similar political moves. In March, for instance, Erdogan replaced Naci Abal as his central bank governor, the third departure from this post in under 2 years. Prior to his removal, Abal had begun to reverse some of the Turkish lira's economic woes by increasing interest rate. The economic theory here being that by raising interest rates, not only is spending slowed down, lowering inflation, but you also begin to attract foreign capital, increasing the strength of your currency. With lira having hit near record lows prior to Abal's appointment, raising interest rates was the right course of action. Well, it was the right course economically speaking, given that the lira was at one point the best performing emerging currency of 2021. No one, however, really likes to see the cost of lending and crucially investment increase though. And no one was more upset than Erdogan, who promptly sacked Abgal, causing the currency to lose much of its gains. Jeffrey Haley, a senior market analyst at Adana, emphasised that this is all part of Erdogan's own brand of economics, Erdonomics. The basic premise of Erdonomics, he says, is that higher interest rates cause higher inflation, a theory that flies in the face of conventional economic theory everywhere. Erdogan himself described this economic position, remarking that if we remove the burden of interest rates from investments and costs, then we will enter a calmer environment because it's the interest rate that causes cost inflation. But like we said, this goes directly against conventional economic theory and reality. So in June, inflation climbed further and hit 17.5%, the highest rate in over 2 years, causing the lira to dip even further to its lowest point in over 2 decades. And while the discussion so far has been quite theoretical, the World Bank has calculated that economic mismanagement coupled with the pandemic has pushed more than 1.6 million Turks into poverty last year alone. On the inequality front, the Gini coefficient, which measures the distribution of wealth in society, has seen sharp rises in Turkey since 2011. And as things now stand, the gains made during Erdogan's first terms in office have been completely eroded. Turkish banks also have, according to Capital Economics, close to $90 billion of bonds and debts coming due in the next year. And while they have in the past been able to refinance and roll over these debts, the constant political manoeuvring of monetary policy may provoke a demand for repayment, risking yet another financial crisis. A financial crisis made worse when considering that foreign investment has all but collapsed in the country. And this political crisis is hurting Erdogan badly. According to a recent poll, support for his AK party stands at just 26%. A level at which, if a presidential election were to be held today, Erdogan would lose to any of his 3 main contenders. And although elections are scheduled for 2023, according to The Economist, some 58% of Turks want them much sooner. These factors have all caused Erdogan to react. State institutions have been ordered to rein in expenditures and suspend property and construction projects, with the office of the presidency notably excluded. This came just days before pictures of Erdogan's presidential estate, valued at $74 million, were published in several newspapers. What do you think though? Is conventional economic wisdom wrong? Will Turkey's economic crisis, coupled with political developments, lead to early elections in the country? As always, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified every time we release a new video. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible. And if you want to see your name at the end of videos, then you too can back us on Patreon. The link to that is in the description.